Hi, it's Patrick. In this video I'm going to show you briefly how to create the Jigsaw activity. A Jigsaw activity is an instructional strategy or an instructional approach that's basically a cooperative learning activity. It's where you set students in groups and you have them go out and research certain topics and come back and share. You might have used something like this where you will have students read, for instance, a certain part of a chapter and come back and tell everyone else what they learned. Well, with a web version of a Jigsaw, you basically set up students in groups. In this example, it's on Web 2.0. So you can see there's different search tool categories, there's different groups, and then they have to go and research each one of these things. You can learn more about the Jigsaw approach at the following website, jigsaw.org. For now, what we're going to do is I'm going to jump right in and I'm going to show you how to create something like this. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new file. Then I'm going to save it. And at this point, you should be paying attention to your file structure. And notice that I'm over here in the Files panel, Local Files. You should be able to see a nice and orderly set of files that you all recognize. Your files or your folders with your files within it can quickly become almost like a junk drawer. And so you need to regularly tend to it and make sure that it's clean and orderly because it can cause you problems over time. And so I can look under the images and it should all make sense, everything that you see. If you have any old files that aren't supposed to be there, now's the time probably to delete those and to keep that nice and clean. I'm going to add a title. At this point, I assume that you know the basics, so I'm going to jump in and I'm just going to hand code the basic structure of my page. Now that I have the basic structure set up, I'm going to go and copy and paste my content in this. You likely have already created your content. If not, you can just start typing it right in here with Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver always prefers if you actually write your content directly in Dreamweaver rather than copying and pasting. But in this case, I already have my content, so I'm just going to copy and paste it. Now the goal of this is not for you to create something exactly like this, and I'm not going to try to recreate this exactly, but I am going to go ahead and take this banner image and I'm going to save it in my images folder. I'm going to insert that into my header. Make sure I delete this text, and I'm going to also make sure that I add the meaningful alt text. Now, one of the focuses of this actual project is we want you to actually use a table. Tables used to be used much the way that we use divs or HTML5 structure tags now. We used to, in the early days of the web, use tables to basically structure and control the layout of a web page. Nowadays, there are much more sophisticated, more purposeful ways to do that, leaving tables to be used more for tabular type of information. And so I'm going to add my table in a minute, but you'll notice that in this example, down here, we have a table with a number of columns and rows, so we will add that in a few. But for now, I'm going to go and I'm going to add my headings. Now after my heading down here, I'm going to basically put my cursor in here. And for a table, you can go up and you can go to Insert Table. It's going to give you this basic layout where you can control some basic things. HTML5, to really validate, it wants you to do such things as adding border thickness, table width. It really prefers that you do that in CSS. And so for now, I'm going to get rid of that. And I would basically, if I wanted to do something like this, example that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows and 3 columns, I would do something like this. And there I can see it's basically set up here. And as I add content, it will adjust, but I'm going to add some CSS later to control the look and feel of that more. But in this case, I'm going to take a minute and I'm just going to copy in all of my information. So now to speed this up, rather than actually add all the links, I'm just going to quickly add basically a # a hashtag to create the look and feel of a link. I'm going to preview this, and I can see that I have the basic text here, and I can use CSS to control the layout of this a bit more. What I want to do at this point is I want to validate and see how everything looks. So no warnings found. I like to validate early because then if there is a problem, I can go ahead and try to address it right away. So let's take a minute and look at actually the HTML that makes up a table. So you have the table tag, which starts at the opening, and you have a closing table tag, but then within that you have some other tags. So the main ones you'll see always is TR, they give a table row, and then within that the cells, the data, table data, TD. So this is the general makeup of a table. Now the reality is in this case what I can do rather than a TD tag is I can use a table heading tag for these because they are actually headings for each of mine, and so this can help improve it. Notice how that just changed a couple things, and then here I have this as an H2, but I can actually create a caption like that and get rid of this, and these are things that are just going to improve the accessibility of my table. Now I'm ready to add some CSS. So I'm going to go to the CSS designer, I'm going to hit the plus sign, create a new file, and I'm going to browse to where I want it. So now that I have my file set up, I'm going to start with my body. Set my font family. Now that I've set 100%, I've added a color. I'm going to add 0 margin and 0 padding. And now add my container. The width I'm doing based on the banner image that I have. And then I'm going to do a auto margin left and right to make sure that div container is centered. I'm going to add a background that's white. I'm going to add a border around the whole thing. So I'm going to do 1 pixel. Solid. I'll do this gray color. Go to my header and basically make sure that I have 0 padding around it. My section, on the other hand, I'm going to give a little. Something I forgot to do earlier was make this a numbered list. So I'll go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to now do my H2. Color. And then the font size. So now I'm going to jump in and I'm going to start styling adding some styles to the table. Now this is where it can get kind of confusing. So one of the things I want to point out is that you can Google and find table generators, which we're going to have you spend some time looking for these, but I just want to reiterate that there are these tools out here that can really sometimes make styling a table. So maybe you want something like this, and then you can copy and paste the CSS and the HTML. So sometimes this might be the easiest way to create a fancy looking table, but we'll do the basics right now. So I'm going to take my table and table tag, highlight it, have it come up here. Now if I was going to have multiple tables, this might be, I might want to be this specific. In this case I only have one table on this page. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a width of 100%. I'm going to add 0 padding and 0 margin. Actually set that backwards, but hopefully you get what I'm doing here. And this should be 0. I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to do border collapse. I'm going to choose collapse. And then border spacing, I'm going to actually do 0. Now if you remember, I made these table headings TH, so I'm going to add some style to those. Add some background color. I'm going to add text align left. And then 10 pixels padding all around. Now I'm going to add, and I'm going to do THTD, so I want this to be for both of these. I'm going to make the font size a little smaller. I'm going to add some padding, and do this just at the bottom. Hopefully all of this will kind of start making sense as I go through here and do this more. And then I'm going to add a border bottom. So you see what I basically did there is I added that padding, I added this nice little border bottom right down there. Now I'm going to click on the caption. I'm going to make this bold. I'm going to make it left aligned. Add a line height. Add some padding. And let's add some color too. Overall it looks pretty good. In the example, if I look at it, there's definitely, this is a color, so I would want to do something there. It actually goes all the way to the edge. And so looking at this, my guess is I did something quick where I made a mistake. So notice right here there's not a margin right. So that didn't quite do it either, so let's dig a little deeper. Now actually it was down here, it just went out of order. So let's go look up, it probably has something to do with my section here. Notice I have that top right, I have padding all the way around. And so what you can always do with something like this too is you can always just change this if you want it just to be 5 pixels. You can always simplify this. Notice how it does this? So this is why I'm used to just hand coding this a lot of times, because it just makes my code a little cleaner. So there you can see it's actual equal distance on both, so that looks pretty good. I could tighten that up and have it go straight across. So in this case, I added 5 pixels to my section. I could basically end my section earlier rather than have it within. So if I drag that closing tag up, and there it goes. I could also create a second section and have a class on the first section that has a 5 pixel padding, and then the second class has none. There are a number of ways that you can kind of address that. So now I'm going to basically add a little more HTML here. I'm going to make each one of these in H3. Now add some styles to that H3. Start with font size, then color. I'm going to make my footer a little smaller, as I tend to always do. Text left align, font size 0.8. Definitely could use a little bit of padding over here to align that a little better. But overall, it looks pretty good. You know, I could also play with adding a different color for the background. I could even try to see what would happen with an orange like that. So let's start there and see what it looks like. Basically, you just want to have fun. You want to keep kind of pushing the boundaries for how you design things. So if I take this body tag and I go to body, go to background, and I take my color picker over, you can see what that looks like. That might be a little too strong, but be aware of how just a little bit of contrast, or in this case a big bit of contrast, can make a really profound effect on a page. So I'm going to add a class, and I'm going to add that padding, and then I'm going to wrap this up. So in this example, if you remember, the footer actually has a background color. I don't even remember exactly what it is, but it's something like that. And then I could probably a light gray. Let's do that. So these H3 and this learner description. You see I'm going pretty fast now. So for a class, I could even just call it learner. I start with a period, all lowercase. You notice that I actually did that in the wrong place. I want to hit the plus sign, then do that. Go to font. I'm going to make this color I was using earlier. I'm going to do font size. I'll do 0.8 In this case, I'll play with the font weight and I'll make it bold. So, as always, I have to actually then go and add the class in the HTML. So if I scroll up, I highlight that, I go down here, go to learner, and save all, validate it once more. That looks good, and preview it. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I quickly showed you how to create a basic Jigsaw activity. More than anything, this one, different than other assignments, it focuses on how you basically add a table to structure content, and then more specifically your tabular data, and then how to add some CSS to it. Tables can get tricky, so don't forget that you can always spend time looking at the table generators online and using some of the code out there. They're definitely here. As I'm looking at this, there's some alignment issues. This isn't perfect. I would definitely tweak this further, but hopefully this gives you the basic idea how to create a page and more specifically use a table and add some styles. Thanks.